Well, good morning. We want to welcome you to the Indiana Clean School Bus Consortium webinar. My name is Carl Lisick, Director with Drive Clean Indiana, and the Drive Clean Indiana team will be acting as your host and administrative sponsor for this and all upcoming Indiana Clean School Bus Consortium events. Just a little housekeeping. Please ensure you're muted throughout the meeting. We will begin everyone in mute mode without cameras, but we'll open it up during the question and answer time. You'll be able to type in any of your questions, and we will get to as many questions as we can within this hour. So if we don't get to your answer, we will email you that answer. So today's presentation will be about 45 to an hour long, followed by this question and answer. Any additional questions can be emailed to info@drivecleanindiana.org. And this presentation is being recorded and will be posted to the Drive Clean Indiana website. All of the upcoming announcements, including events, grant projects, and pertinent information will be on our website. So if you have any questions, please feel free to call our office at 219-644-3690. So just a little background on the Indiana Clean School Bus Consortium. It is basically a collaboration of federal, state, and local agencies and concerned citizens, along with our communities, nonprofit organizations, and private companies. We're working together to make a visible difference in our communities by reducing exposure to emissions from school bus, diesel engines, and equipment. Our goal also is to highlight the great projects and technologies that are being implemented in our state and provide you with resources that will assist you in learning about these new technologies, health concerns, peer-to-peer interaction, overviews and demonstrations of these technologies, as well as best management practices. We want to understand what information you would like to learn about, and we will create upcoming webinars based on the feedback we receive from you. Our goal is also selfish. We want all of our schools applying for upcoming funding opportunities that will reduce barriers to the transition to cleaner school bus technologies. So this is your consortium created for clean Indiana school buses. So our goal is to be a one-stop shop for everything school buses in the state of Indiana. We have a great webinar today and some wonderful news. So just to review our agenda today, we're going to have a presentation from Mr. Joshua Williams of Highland Electric Fleets, as well as Mr. Dick Johnson from BorgWarner, and then followed up by an update from Mr. Carter Granberg on the US EPA Clean School Bus Rebate Program. So we have a packed agenda. So if you have any questions, please put those in the chat and we'll get to them as we can. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Joshua Williams of Highland Electric Fleets. Josh, take it away.
Great, thank you, Carl. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today and to tell you a little bit more about Highland, and really want to focus on some of the lessons learned through our participation in the EPA Clean School Bus Program. And hopefully that gives school districts across Indiana some ideas of what they could think about as they apply to this current rebate program and subsequent programs. Before we start, I should say, I admit I'm not from Indiana. I live in Illinois, but my wife did go to Butler, and we actually got married in Indiana. So wherever I end up in the world, Indiana always plays a special place in my heart. So great to be here today. We can move to the next slide, please. So just very briefly, Highland is an electrification as a service provider. And really what we do is we provide a public-private partnership model to help school districts or their bus operators overcome the high upfront costs and the complexities associated with electrification. So just very briefly, we have been able to drive 1 million miles using electric school buses, which I think demonstrates that the technology is here and ready, and it can be deployed at scale. What I'm really most proud about this slide is actually these dots across North America. These represent the projects where we're partnering with school districts, and I'm proud that these dots represent a wide range of communities. So we're working with large urban districts, suburban districts, and several rural districts as well. And really just demonstrating that we feel strongly that every type of community can and should be able to access this technology. And we'll talk a little bit more about that once we get to the program. But just wanted to highlight that, as it pertains to Indiana, I think the technology is ready for every type of route and scenario. We can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Just very briefly, this outlines Highland's public-private partnership. And really what we do is we help a school district by providing the upfront finance, but also a streamlined project management service, and really ends up being a daily route management and charge management service as well. So just briefly, some of the steps we do is, first thing we do is work with a community, understand what is the community's goals and objectives. You know, some communities are really passionate about just saving costs and want to do electrification as cost effectively as possible. Other school districts are a little bit more interested in maybe some of the future opportunities of the technology, like vehicle to grid or bidirectional charging, which we'll talk about. But we have to start with what a community values and then build the project up from there. Then we'll also help by applying to grants. Similar to the Drive Clean Indiana team, we can walk schools through the grant process. And so I think we could really complement the support that Carl's team provides. And if anyone ever has questions about bus brands or charger brands, we're happy to be a sounding board throughout the application process. And then just briefly, you know, we then build up the whole project from there. That includes applying to the grants, like I said. If grants are awarded, we will help procure the buses and all of the charging infrastructure, really to be a one-stop shop for the school district to help streamline the whole process on their behalf. We will also train the local drivers and technicians. So our goal is to not displace any local labor, but really just help people understand this new technology and get them confident on using the electric school buses. And then finally, once everything is implemented and the project is ready to go, we then help on a daily basis, making sure the vehicles are sufficiently charged and ready to go. So the school district can do what they do best in getting kids to and from school, and we will help just make sure the electric buses are operating efficiently. Lastly, I'll just say this is a performance-based arrangement. So if for some reason a bus isn't working or a charger is having issues on any given day, we cover the cost and the time required to get it up and running. So really just trying to help districts take some of the risk off of their shoulders throughout this new process. You could go to the next slide, please. And then briefly, this is just a visual that kind of explains some of the facets of our public-private partnership model. And on the left, you can see, traditionally, diesel fleets have a certain cost. And at the moment, without grants, electric vehicles are still, a much higher upfront cost. And what we look to do at Highland is to use our model and not only make it price parity with the diesel fleet, but in the best of cases, create cost savings on behalf of school districts. So a couple of ways we can do that are typically we will own the buses on our balance sheet. And as a private company, that enables us to get federal tax benefits and depreciate the vehicles quicker. And then we could pass those savings on to the school district. We can also look for additional incentives, really just trying to find savings and value that a school district as a public entity might not be able to get on their own. So really just trying to bring the best of a private company and marry that up to the best of a public institution like a school district and make it as cost effective as possible. You go to the next slide, please. And this is where I really wanted to spend most of the time, is really honing in on some of the lessons we've learned by participating in the EPA Clean School Bus Program. And hopefully this can provide some insight as districts in Indiana consider the program. We've been fortunate to apply with over 100 different schools. That was both in the first rebate round in 2022, and then this past grant round, we were able to work with a lot of school districts as well. So just wanted to run through a few lessons learned that we've seen and food for thought. The first one being maybe a shout out to our friends at EPA. I know they like to always remind everyone as well, it is important to check your SAM.gov registration. That really is the gateway to participating in this program. So it never hurts to double check and make sure that your school district has access to that website and you have all the credentials needed. It can take quite a while to renew that or create a new profile. So if you're interested, I would encourage you to do that as soon as possible. The next one is collect details on your fleet. This seems intuitive, and I know a lot of school districts, they know their current fleet inside and out, which is great. You know, you have to first start with understanding your routes and your use cases, and that can really help you decide how to approach electrification. But one step that sometimes is overlooked is just making sure you have all of that paperwork at the ready. EPA, the application itself is pretty straightforward, but there are certain pieces of information that it requires. Some of it is easy to get, others, you know, there are times where you have to get VIN numbers and things like that. The past grant round required engine numbers as well, which, you know, are possible to get, but sometimes it takes a little time. So just wanted to let people know to prepare for that. Next, I know the Drive Clean Indiana team emphasized this quite a bit as well, but just getting in front of your utility as early as possible, really to understand what sort of infrastructure and capacity upgrades might be required. And this will really then lead into the timeline for the project and ultimately the overall costs. And then, you know, also wanted to consider creative methods for just planning the project. As far as procurement goes, there are ways to bundle things together. So we have seen school districts that rather than put out an RFP for buses and chargers separately, they've actually put out RFPs for a comprehensive service. So that could be a good way to save additional costs. As far as planning for the project, you could also think of creative ways to maintain the technology. So for instance, at Highland, we buy buses directly from the dealer. So the dealer network is very important for this transition, but there are some aspects of the technology that are new as well. And so when we've been working with a few rural districts, we actually realized that in order to do some of the high voltage maintenance work, their local dealer was actually quite far away. So we had to get a little creative as far as how can we make sure that school district can receive service in a timely manner. And in a few cases, we actually found there were Cummins tech facilities that were closer than the local dealer. And then Cummins would then work in partnership with that dealer just to make sure that we could get to those rural districts in a timely manner when needed. Lastly, just touching on planning for the future. And what we mean by this is, I think a lot of school districts, they rightly so want to test this technology, maybe only starting with a small number of buses, but that's great. And as you do that, if you're applying for these grants, it does help to future-proof your depot. So maybe you're only deploying 2 to 5 buses to start, but we always encourage districts, it's cheaper to break ground once. So if you think you might want to move upwards to 10, 15, 20 buses down the line, when you do that initial infrastructure work, it's helpful to plan for the future. And lastly, you know, as far as planning for future technologies, one thing to think and keep in mind is vehicle to grid, which is kind of early days, but we do see it as an exciting opportunity for school districts. And with that, we can move to the last slide, please. Thank you. And so just briefly, I did want to mention Highland, you know, we are excited about bidirectional charging or vehicle to grid, as we call it. We were successful in coordinating the first commercially viable vehicle to grid project. And we did this in Massachusetts, and we're currently doing it in a few other states. It is a great way to, in the future, create additional value for school districts. So in Massachusetts, we've had several buses that have made $10,000 to $12,000 over the summer when they're not being used. This technology is still early, but it is very possible, and we're very fortunate at Highland to work with some great partners, technology partners, which I think is a good segue to handing it over to our good friend Dick Johnson at BorgWarner, who Dick, he's a humble guy, but he's actually one of the early thought leaders in vehicle-to-grid technology. So glad we can share the stage today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh. Great information. And with that, keeping things moving forward, I'd like to introduce Mr. Dick Johnson from BorgWarner. Dick, the floor is yours. Dick, can you hear me? I think Dick might be having some technical
There we go.
There we go.
I'm muted now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carl, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk. And as you can see, I have an old slide in the front, but I have been around quite a bit, and I will talk a little bit more about vehicle to grid because I'm very passionate about it. But BorgWarner right now is going through a transition. Originally, if a lot of you know BorgWarner, they basically did a lot of automotive parts for OEMs and that type of thing. We have a new group now called the Morris Group that's very focused on electrification. So we're not just doing chargers. They bought Rhombus last year, but we're also doing batteries and other components for electric vehicles. Next slide. So I'm very passionate, and my team is very passionate about working with school districts as Highland is. We like to work very closely with the school district on the EPA program, and we've worked with a lot of schools in terms of getting grants and support for the entire package. But I think the key part here is that we have enough experience that we can walk you through the whole process and work with you and actually help you write the grant. So we're more than happy to do that because everybody would like to have a lot of people are hesitant because they don't want to go through the process. We're happy to help you walk through that. Next slide, please. So our company is located, our manufacturing facility is located in Dearborn, Michigan. We're a made in the USA charging company. We are UL listed, and we also have headquarters, a research facility in San Diego. So we're right in your backyard, so it's easy for us to actually deliver charges to your location. BorgWarner, as you probably know, is a huge multi-billion-dollar company with locations throughout the world. Next slide. So I wanted to talk a little bit about charging because there's every school district I talk to and everybody I'm talking with talks about charging. And of course, you know, there's AC charging, which you have level 1, which doesn't work real well for school buses, and then level 2, which can work very efficiently for a school bus if it's sitting there most of the time. At BorgWarner, all we have in our cadre is DC fast chargers. And basically, DC requires something different. Right now, if you're going with level 2, and a lot of school districts do that, is because you've already got 208 and 240 volts available. When you start moving up into DC fast chargers, you've got to bring in and get the utility involved right away to talk about upgrading your system to 483 phase. In a lot of cases, in a lot of states, there's a make-ready program, and the utility works with you not only on the charger, but also making the upgrades for the 483 phase at your location. As time goes on, it appears that a lot of the school bus and OEM manufacturers are going more and more towards DC fast chargers. And so that restricts the level 2 charging on the buses. So next slide. So we have kind of a unique positioning in the marketplace with our DC fast chargers. This shows you sequential charging, which allows you to actually take a 60 kW or a 125 kilowatt charger and add up to 5 dispensers on the charger, which then causes, when you look at it from an electrical standpoint, all you have is one breaker on the 60 kW, so you have a lower expense there. But I think the key part here is that the buses are usually sitting there long enough that they can charge when they come back in between runs in the morning and afternoon runs. So it can lower your cost of acquisition fairly substantially. Next slide. So we've actually got that going up in Pontiac. The school district in the city of Pontiac has just done that, and they lowered their dispenser cost per dispenser down to around $20,000 per dispenser. So that lowers cost from, say, a 60 kW that might cost you $50,000 down to somewhere between $13,000 and $20,000. And it just allows you to actually plug in and charge those buses as they come back. The next slide, please. So just to give you a kind of an idea, so what we're looking at on this is an example of sequential charging times for your buses. So this is something that we tend to work closely with you on what buses you have, what the voltages and the battery kilowatts are in the bus itself, and the distances run, and it varies all over the place. And then typically a bus will burn between 1 or 1.5 kilowatt per mile. So that gives you some idea of distances that you can go with a bus. So in this particular example, the state of charge is 80% coming back, or 70, 60. So I just used that as an example. And then the battery size is 226 kilowatts. So if you're going back out, let's say it's at 100%, and you use 80%, you just used up 45.2 kilowatts of your bus. So coming back with 160 watt charger, kilowatt charger, you could charge in less than an hour. But as you follow it down, if I have 5 buses that come back, I have 3.8 hours to get them back up to 100%. Now, the key here, though, is you don't have to be at 100% to do your run. And so if you follow this down, at 70, it takes longer, 60 and 50. But the big question is what's it take to run your routes? Usually probably less than 60%. So you have plenty of adequate time in between the morning run and the afternoon run to charge all 5 buses. And then after they return in the evening, it really doesn't matter. So it's an excellent way of just lowering your cost of acquisition and being able to charge your buses on a DC fast charger. In a lot of cases, this comes out less expensive than if you bought a 30 kilowatt charger for each of your buses. So just another option for you. The next option we have, next slide, is our bidirectionality of our charger. So we are one of the only bidirectional chargers in the United States, which allows you to move power from the bus into the grid or actually into a building. So, you have vehicle to grid and vehicle to building that are opportunities to earn money actually for the school district. Next slide. So vehicle to grid appears to be just on the forefront, but I go clear back with Dr. Willa Kempton at the University of Delaware, where we actually did, and that's 2009. He walked into my office and said, can you convert gasoline vehicles over to electric vehicles? And I thought he was crazy, but actually we ended up doing that with the Scion XBs at the time, which was a change, and we actually, on the next slide, you'll see that we actually did vehicle to grid, and we're the first to interconnect with PJM, which is the grid operator. So at that time, we were actually able to earn about $100 per vehicle of the 7 Scion XBs that we converted. And that was the first pilot project for vehicle to grid in the United States. The second one was with BMW, where we had 20 different BMWs at 20 different locations and aggregated those with PJM and actually earned about $200 a month per vehicle. So it's real world stuff. It's just that the utilities at this point in time are still looking at the viability of using vehicles to supplement the grid operations. Next slide. So just to give you an idea, if you don't understand what vehicle to grid does, it doesn't change anything that you currently do with your buses, okay? You still have control over your buses, and the number one function of a bus is to pick up and deliver children, and that's the function. But at certain times, as you saw in from Highland, they were doing peak shaving. So in that particular case, there's a software package, and there's a number of software packages available that have the capability of communicating with the bus and also with the charger and also with the grid. And so the driver or fleet operator can schedule their buses as they normally do, and you can also schedule the times that you actually want to do vehicle to grid with your buses and allow the grid operator to access the batteries. So the advantage to bidirectionality is the fact that at peak times, especially in the summer when the buses are sitting most of the time, and the higher peak times, the grid has the opportunity to actually use the battery to actually supplement the grid. So basically what they'll look at is that'll be a resource. The other opportunity that you have with vehicle to building is that you have the ability to do emergency power to the building. So that's an opportunity, especially in Indiana, if you have tornadoes, where you could actually pull the bus up to a building and actually do emergency power to that building. So bidirectionality is kind of a future proof in the future for moving forward, because as we get more and more wind energy, solar energy, it becomes critical to be able to store it. So in Illinois right now, there's a number of school districts that are actually doing solar, stationary batteries, chargers, our bidirectional charger, and school buses to do microgrids. And so many of the school districts are looking at how can I get off the grid or lower my electric bill. And that seems to be the trend throughout a lot of the United States now, is actually to put together a whole microgrid. Next slide. So we do offer right now 2 chargers. This is just a summary. Not selling chargers, I'm really selling services. If we can help you actually apply for your EPA grant, we're happy to work there. And we can work through, you know, how 5-to-1 might work for your particular situation and lower your cost of acquisition. So you can see that we are bidirectional, we are UL, we have a 5- and 10-year warranty. We probably have the best lead times. It's 4 to 8 weeks for delivery. And we are NEVI compliant. So next slide. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you. I'm more than happy, and so is my team, to actually help if you have questions or if you'd like help with your application for the EPA.
Well, thank you, Dick. Very interesting information. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions at the end of the presentation. Hopefully we can get to all the questions. With that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Carter Granberg with the US EPA Clean School Bus Program. Carter?
Thank you very much, Carl. And hopefully I won't take up too much time because, yeah, I know right now we're kind of in the peak of rebate season, so I'd love for there to be more time for questions and discussions. So some of this information is going to be quick little highlights of review, and then other ones are going to be some new information that just want to broadcast to make really obvious and easy to access during this open season for rebates. So we can jump on in. This is just a really quick overview slide. This should be, at this point, I've been hammering this nonstop almost every time, so I'm just going to kind of whip through it. Just to highlight, this time around, we are offering $500 million for clean school buses. Want to highlight, just going forward, that this is completely subject for change, just like all aspects of the program. We saw some big changes happen between rounds of rebates. So we're continuously advocating that interested parties just kind of keep an eye on things, understand that stuff might shift around, might change. EPA, as the headquarters, is really receptive to feedback, and if they hear enough complaints or suggestions or ideas, they're willing to take those into account. So please feel free to reach out to the main Clean School Bus EPA email, which you can find at the EPA's website down there at the bottom, epa.gov/cleanschoolbus. Again, this is for replacement of combustion engines to replace with compressed natural gas, propane, or electric vehicles, as well as electric vehicle infrastructure. There are priority applicants. There is a bit of a shift on that I'll talk about again in a second. Just a reminder that priority applicants are those defined as high-need school districts, according to safety data, tribal school districts, and those that are Rural Code 43, remote rural. And that would be, yeah, we can jump to the next slide. I can talk about the big change. So yeah, the big shift this time around for rebates is that instead of it being 100% of funds going to rebates, they've now blocked it off. 60% of the funds are going to those priority applicants that I talked about on the last slide, while 40% is fair game to any school district. So the big shift here, and I think for this coalition as a whole, is we really want to be targeting our outreach and efforts to every single school. We saw with the original round of rebates, this was a bit of a numbers game where the states that had more applications come in proportionally got a bigger share of the total national funding. So it's in our interest as a region, as a state of Indiana, to have as many applications from as many schools as possible coming in. So big goal that we want to hammer home to all the states. And if you have, I know here we've done some outreach as a coalition already to school districts, but I'll touch on this again at the end. If we can just kind of keep that outreach going in different ways. If you have a ear with different schools, it's a good thing to just kind of keep plugging this and mentioning it. The more people that are aware of it and know that now every school is eligible to apply and that rebates are a pretty relatively easy way to get the money compared to grants, the better chance I think we can have of getting some funds into the state. Not gonna hit every number here, but I do want to highlight this and just point out that if you are a school district on the call and you are interested in funding, there is some changes and nuance to what funding is available depending on what you're replacing and what vehicle you were trying to replace it with. If you want to deep dive into this table, again, this is available at that link at the bottom, that epa.gov/cleanschoolbus. Just know that there have been some shifts in what the funding is for this round of rebates versus the last. The goal overall being to help kind of over time lower the market cost of these buses and make them generally more accessible. I do want to highlight on the right again that if you are looking at ADA compliant buses, you are eligible for an additional $20K in funding per bus. If you are, this doesn't apply to Indiana, so I'm going to skip over the high shipping costs. And the tax credits I didn't talk about this last time, but I kind of want to hit it a little bit more this time. Selectees may potentially be eligible for new IRA tax credits that are not reflected in this funding table. And on the next slide, I'm going to touch on this a bit more. So yeah, there are IRS tax credits this time around as part of that IRA bill, and you may be eligible for them if you are applying, so this is worth looking into. we have been explicitly told that we cannot give tax advice. So I really recommend that if this is anything on the slide is of interest to you, or if you're raising an eyebrow over the idea of tax credits, please, please, please go to the IRS website and look this up. There's not going to be a lot of information on this provided by EPA, just because it's kind of out of our realm and wheelhouse, and we don't want to be giving people incorrect information on accident. But just do want to highlight that there is a commercial clean vehicle credit, which can provide up to $40,000 for qualified commercial clean vehicles. There's also the alternative fuel vehicle refueling property credit, which can help with that charging and refueling infrastructure, which on the last round of rebates is where we saw some headaches occurring. We saw some heightened costs, some things that were not eligible from the rebates that were a little frustrating that had to be covered by the school districts. That wasn't a huge problem, but when we did see problems, that was a common thread we saw. So this is something that's worth checking into too if you're looking at getting a lot of infrastructure put in place. Again, please check out the IRS website if you want to look at more details about that. There's not going to be a ton on the EPA website in regards to these tax credits. Just some general steps if you're a school district looking to apply. Number one would be going to that website I keep plugging. That's at the bottom of the webpage, epa.gov/cleanschoolbus. Make sure you also register your organization with sam.gov. This was surprisingly a major pinch point for school districts that got the rebates, were fully signed off, ready to get their funding, and they got to the end of the process just to find out that their sam.gov was not current and registered, and all of their funds had to be put on pause until they could do that. And it can take some time. So if you are interested, if you already are a school district with funds or looking to get more funds, we suggest once a year going in there, making sure your sam.gov account is up to date. You would then, once you've done those first two steps, make sure you complete the actual application forms and any supplemental applicant forms that might be necessary or relevant to you. And then the big deadline here is that January 31st at 4 p.m. Eastern time. After that, the portal will be closed and no new applications will be accepted. Just some additional important dates want to highlight here. There are a series of ongoing webinars that you can find, and on the next slide, touch on what webinars are left. There are questions that can be submitted to that email that's at that Clean School Bus link below. If you have any questions about the program as a whole, or you have programs about your specific application, please reach out. There's an entire team that's being increasingly buffed up with more and more people to answer those questions promptly. That have a bunch of resources they can send you. Application deadline, again, January 31st. Then going forward, once you submit, we expect that around April 2024, there would be notification of who was selected. And between April and October, if you were selected, you would be submitting a payment request form, which is your formal rebate paperwork with your purchase orders, and then getting that processed. And then the EPA would be dispersing funds as they process those. For anyone who went through the first round, this process is being streamlined on the back end. So we're expecting this to be a lot smoother, a lot quicker. So if you are coming in for your first time, congrats, you missed some of the headaches that I think we went through on the first round. If you are potentially interested in coming in for a second round of funding, the good news is here that this should be an overall easier process. And I can go to the next slide. Oh, one more. Yeah, and just wanted to highlight remaining webinars and also previous webinars. If you see any that are of interest to you, they've all been recorded, including the ones from last year, which have a little bit more basic information about like, how do I apply? How do I fill out the paperwork? So it's good to go back through that library and look at past webinars. If you are new to the program and want to learn more and kind of catch up quickly, that's a good starting place. But there will be upcoming webinars as well that you can join in live. There's going to be some open Q&As where you can ask questions in real time and have people on the call answer them for you. But also we will record these if you can't make them, so you're free to check them out online and look at them at your leisure. So just some notes unique to our coalition here today. Just want to highlight this again. Please, if you have the power to do so, and if you're not already, outreach to all the school districts in the state of Indiana. Let them know that they are eligible to apply. 40% are going to non-priority applicants, which is a significant portion of the money. And we saw it with the first round of rebates. The more applications we get, the higher proportional amount of money the state of Indiana is likely to receive. So just the more ears we can get in on this, the more people we can notify and get them looped in. Please invite them to this coalition. If we can grow this coalition and get more people looped in and providing them with resources and answering their questions and making the idea of clean school buses less scary and foreign to them, it should be an easier process to kind of get them on board. We saw that before where we kind of bring people into the fold, demystify some of the stuff, and they go, oh, this is actually pretty easy. And we can connect them with people in this coalition who've already gone through that process. And it's a huge help to them to see that it's not this crazy, hard, bureaucratic process. It's actually, well, in some ways it can sometimes be, but with that, overall, it's easier than I think some people are maybe expecting. And then the other big update we had here was that we have received on our end in the EPA some funding to do at least 4 in-person coalition meetings in Indiana. So this really hasn't been discussed, just kind of want to put on everyone's radar, and we can maybe talk about it at a future meeting. But maybe once a quarter we're looking at doing some type of in-person meeting, whether that be this actual meeting in person or some type of optional supplemental like meeting where we maybe do a Q&A or maybe visit a school district and show off buses to interested parties. But just kind of keep that on your mind. If that's something that you want to weigh in on or have interest in, I'd be happy to kind of hear thoughts on it. It's something we're still discussing on our end and we'll be hashing out in the coming few months, kind of going into the next year. The last update I have is if you are a school district that has received clean school buses, we love to promote that within the region. Internally in the office, we love to promote it to other schools throughout the region. Please send me pictures of clean school buses or infrastructure as you receive them and set them up. If you have kids on the buses and you're assuming there's consent with taking pictures of the kids, please send them our way. We love to share them around. And then additionally, if you're receiving buses and doing any type of publicity event or looking to do a publicity event, let us know. We have some limited availability and like to try and make it out to the school districts and help them show off. Either just be in attendance or be a part of the publicity event. Let us know. You can reach me for any of that stuff again at cranberg.carter@epa.gov. And I think that might be all I have today. I don't know if there's one last slide or not. Nope, that was it. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Carter. Wow, what a jam-packed day today. We do have one other speaker, and I'd like to introduce our co-chair for the Indiana Clean School Bus Coalition, Mr. Sean Seals of the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. Sean?
Thank you, Carl. I do not have a presentation, and I will not take up a lot of your time. I just wanted to say that it's always a pleasure to be a part of these conversations and to be a part of the Indiana Clean School Bus Consortium team. And although we don't have the same level of funding that EPA continues to be able to push out, I did want to make folks aware that I have recently completed the balancing of the $42 million Volkswagen checkbook, so to speak, and it looks like we will probably have around $4 million available for a round 5 RFP, which hopefully will go out sometime in the next month or so. Whether that will be applicable to school buses or not is yet to be seen. So just kind of keep your eyes and ears open on the DieselWise Indiana website, as well as the Indiana Volkswagen Medication Trust website, and keep your ears open to what Drive Clean Indiana is sharing from IDEM, and we'll see if there are logical fits here. I think one of the things that we want to kind of note through this program that we'll be able to fund through IDEM is we can do more than school buses through this program, and we recognize that our Indiana schools have a lot of equipment that is not a big yellow box. And if you need some funding for something other than school buses, we may be able to assist. And that's all I have for now. Thanks for the opportunity, Carl.
Sean, thank you so much. Again, a lot of information, folks, that's been shared here today. As you're thinking of some questions that you'd like, please put that in the chat. But I do have a couple questions that have come through. And Carter, any updates on the Clean School Bus grants from EPA that you can talk about?
All right? We are kept in the loop just as much as you guys are. We hear the updates around the same time. The word on the street is that there should be updates coming very, very soon, hopefully by the end of this month, if not. So, but I will update you guys the second we hear something.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. The next question that we have, and this is for any of the speakers, workplace charging with employees and working within the school corporation. So we are getting inquiries with several other, I'd say, programs that we have where schools are implementing workplace charging for their employees, potentially administrations to some of the school bus drivers. Any comments, any feedback on that, Dick or Joshua?
Yeah, a lot of schools are looking at that for their employees because I drive an electric vehicle, so it would make sense if I could pull up and plug in for the day. That's more level 2 charging, not DC fast charging. So there's a lot of people in the market right now that actually have level 2 chargers that are fairly inexpensive. The expensive part is moving the infrastructure from the building out to the parking lot. So that's something to look at. And I don't know whether you can use VW funds for that or not. So.
Sure, thank you. Another question that we have is, I know that I guess the question really is revolving around Buy America. I think, Dick, you had mentioned, and then even Josh kind of referenced the Buy America. Could you expand on that a little bit? Why schools, why that's important that they're working with vendors that are deploying the Buy America standards?
Yeah, well, part of the EPA ruling for next year is that it is a requirement to Buy America. And as you will see, there's a lot of charging companies that are moving their manufacturing facilities to the United States right now, so to meet that compliance. So right now, it's pretty important to look at Buy America for future. Right now, we're the only compliant one that I'm aware of at this point in time. So most of your materials, I think it's 70% of your materials need to be originated or manufactured in the United States. And we have to go through a compliance check to validate that our chargers meet that criteria.
Got it. Thank you very much. Let me see here. I think Josh, I think one of the questions would involve like some of the warranties with the electric school buses. So, and I guess this is for Dick too, is so the question is, with the vehicle to grid types of activities, does that void a warranty with the school bus manufacturers?
Thanks, Carl. That's a good question. From our perspective, the partners that we work with, school districts that we support, we have a performance-based contract with them. So we're actually, it's kind of like an extended warranty or a super warranty of sorts. And the way I would describe it is if a lot of the standard warranties are 8 years currently, and a lot of people ask us what happens on year 9 if our battery dies. And so in the case of our partners, Highland, we do cover the full cost of the battery. And as far as it relates to vehicle to grid, depending on the use case, there are times where using vehicle to grid can degrade the battery a little bit quicker. That is then a calculation that's required as far as the economic benefit of vehicle to grid versus, degrading the battery a little faster. We could help with that analysis. But as far as warranty goes, in the case of Highland, we cover the warranty much longer than 8 years anyway, so we haven't run into that issue of voiding the warranty with vehicle to grid.
Okay, thank you. One other question, and maybe we might want to take this offline, but I'll just ask it anyways. In Josh, your presentation, you talked about the monetize and some of the tax incentives and things. Could you just explain that a little bit for a school system that is maybe not used to this model with Highland, and how that would work? So you said like monetizing some of the tax incentives.
Yeah, just briefly, and happy to take this offline in more detail. But as far as the tax goes, we typically hold the school buses on our balance sheet. So we technically own them, and that enables us as a private company to depreciate the vehicles and get the federal tax benefits that are in addition to the EV tax benefits that Carter spoke about. So we can monetize those, and then we pass those savings along. And how we do that is all of the facets of the project. So I talked about, 1 through 6 steps. All of those facets are bundled into one fixed fee per bus per year. And that fee is then locked in for the life of the contract. And it even includes things like the routine maintenance and purchasing the electricity. And so we package all that together, and a school district knows exactly how much they're paying to operate those buses for 10 years, if not longer. And so, that is one way to do it. And really our goal is to get that per bus total cost of ownership either equal or lesser value than what a school district pays for diesel buses.
Wonderful. Okay, that's great information. So I don't have any more questions that I'm seeing. Danielle, do you have any more questions online?
There is one more that came in. We have one that asks, who gets the revenue from V to G?
I don't know if you heard that, Josh.
Yeah, I could go briefly. So in our case, school district gets the net benefit. So I think if there's administrative costs, then we use that to offset the actual process of B2G. But in the case study that I shared, the school district received directly $10,000 to $12,000 per bus over the summer, and that went right back into their operating budget in our case.
Wonderful. Well, again, on behalf of the Indiana Clean School Bus Coalition, I just want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone. Can't believe we're saying that already. And our next Indiana Clean School Bus meeting will be on January 9th of 2024. So again, if there's information that you're requesting that you would like to see on January 9th, we will be having a variety of additional speakers, but we'll also be recapping 2023 and some of our accomplishments, and then talking about some of the other things that as we move forward in 2024 that you would like to hear, learn, experience about. As you can see, this is a pretty free sharing of information. We want to educate everyone that's interested in clean school buses. And again, I'm just very proud of all the work that everyone's done for the Indiana Clean School Bus Coalition and our accomplishments. So again, to you and yours, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and we will see you all on January 9th. So look forward to updating our website on the Indiana Clean School Bus Coalition. And again, any additional information, the recording of this webinar and previous webinars will be there. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us or any of the panelists. We can put you in touch with anyone that you need information. So another exciting year. We look forward to 2024. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.